Support for Backpage has been provided by Kohopono Multimedia Publishing, on the web at kohopono.com.
Hello and welcome again to Backpage. I'm Jody C. and today we're visiting with Jan Roberts-Dominguez, who's written this book, which is an excellent book. It's called Oregon Hazelnut Country, The Food, the Drink, the Spirit. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jody.
And thank you for creating such a wonderful cookbook. You're the third cookbook author we've had on this show.
Wow, I'm honored.
So we've had Tiffany Haugen and Jean Johnson. And Jean wrote a book called Cooking Beyond Measure, and Tiffany Haugen did The Power of Flour and all that.
Yes.
So anyway, but tell me about this for you.
Okay.
Shoot.
I will. Well, first of all, it came to be in a more kind of a different route. It, mostly, you know this as well as I do, the typical route for a nonfiction book is you get an idea, you write a proposal, you ship it off to your agent if you're lucky enough to have one. Mm-hmm. She shops it around for you in all the grown-up publishing houses and then gets you a contract. Mm-hmm. And then you write your book. And I've done that, and I will continue to do that. But for this book, the whole concept came through an email from Polly Owen at the Hazelnut Marketing Board. Mm-hmm. And I got this email in the summer of 2009. And she said, Jan, what would you think about writing a cookbook on hazelnuts for us? And I just said, wowie. Because I love hazelnuts. She knew I love hazelnuts because that is what I write about whenever the hazelnut harvest comes in. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the beginning. But then it became clear to me while we're working out all the details on who does what. They wanted this book out in a year. From the summer of 2009, they wanted it out in time for harvest in 2010. Mm-hmm.
So and the harvest comes up in the fall.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So in just about a year, they wanted a full cookbook. Mm-hmm. And typically the process, normal route, is you have about a year to write a book, and then the publisher, you turn it all over to them, which is very hard to do. Mm-hmm. You know, your baby goes off.
I know. It's like dressing your child up for the talent show.
Oh, yes.
And she's starched, and it's so beautiful. And you push her out like that and like wait for people to go, huh? No, don't say that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's not what I meant. Yeah. So you let go of the process at that point. Yeah. And so with this book, so you have a year to do it. You ship it off. And then they have typically about a year, 9 months to a year, to produce the book. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of a 2-year process, but they wanted it in a year. So I said, what if you guys become the publisher and we eliminate that part of it, right? And you do it, and I can help with that because I've done enough books to know the process. So, long story short, they realized they had enough financing to do it that way. So with the financing in place, with an agency like the Hazelnut Marketing Board, they said, find the team. And so I went out, I knew the food photographer right off the bat was going to be Carl Masdam, who I've worked with forever, and is a fantastic, talented, local photographer. And then I needed to find a book designer and an editor, and we would ultimately need to find a printer. And so the editor was no problem. I sleep with him every night.
Mm-hmm. And how many people can say that? I sleep with my editor.
It's my husband, Steve. He's my first read. He is the best at what he does. So he was going to be the editor, and he'd be paid to do it for once. And we still needed to find a book designer. And so at this point, I'm trying to still be very careful about the topic. Around Oregon, I didn't want some other food writer to get a hint of what I was doing. Yeah. It's a very competitive field. Yeah. And I didn't want anybody changing their mind about using me.
How'd you do that?
With Joanne McLennan was the interview. She was a book designer. she founded Edge Design. It's an advertising firm in Corvallis. And she had sold the agency and retired. But she's just so good and so talented. So I lured her to a local restaurant for coffee to talk about a project. And I told her right up front, you aren't going to know for a few months unless you accept right here today. But here are the nuts and bolts of it.
So did you give her glasses with a big nose and mustache to wear when we're talking about this?
Well, people kind of walk around like that. So she was very intrigued, and she was intrigued enough to, and she said, well, is it animal, mineral, or, I go, well, it is food. She said, okay, pears, and I go, Joanne, I'm not going to tell you even if, but she, when I told her Carl Masden was going to be the photographer, that helped. So she agreed, and I then told her the project, and she made a bid for it, and we were off and running. So that's how it came to be.
Wow. Well, that's a better story than just, I worked on it really hard, sent it to my agency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a more...
It was insane. And then we had, I started writing the November of 2009, and I had to turn my manuscript into my very impatient husband by the following May, ideally April. And that meant creating recipes and testing all of those and writing all the text. And getting those to him. And meanwhile, Joanne's waiting for art, and because I was going to do all the art in the book and wherever it was needed. So it was an insane give and take, back and forth, and culminated with food shots, days of shooting food with Carl and Joanne and Steve and their whole team, my husband Steve. And the best year of my life. It was just crazy, crazy good.
Well, one of the things that I like the recipes because I was reading the recipes going, oh man, I could make this.
Yes.
I bet I couldn't make it as good as Margaret, but I could probably make it, That's our friend Margaret over here in the peanut gallery, or the hazelnut gallery.
She's good.
But what I really enjoyed beyond that was the history. There's a lot of stuff in this book that you just wouldn't know.
No.
But the history of the hazelnut industry George Doris was his name.
Yes, right.
He was the guy with the big idea.
1904 or 5, somewhere in there.
So how did you research all that? How did you find all this out?
Well, there's a lot of people that like to talk about filberts, which is what they really are.
Yeah.
The growers say they grow filberts and they sell hazelnuts.
Yeah.
When I first started being a food writer in the 80s, it was, please call them filberts. The whole agency said, we want to be filberts, not hazelnuts, which is how the whole world sees them. So we wrote about filberts, and then they suddenly realized as an industry on the world market they couldn't sell filberts. So they had to go back to hazelnuts. So when they market the book, the hazelnuts, it's as hazelnuts. But they still grow filberts.
I know. Well, so filbert's not a very attractive name.
No. Unless you grow them.
Yeah.
So there were plenty of people around, to kind of get directed towards the stories. There were so many. That book could have been, twice as big as that.
Really?
Just with all the wonderful lore and the love and the sharing that goes on in the research and in how to grow them, the propagation. They're always trying to make a better nut.
Yeah. Well, so are they peculiar to the Willamette Valley? Do they grow other places?
Yes. No. They started in other places as well. They have a certain climate they like, but in the U.S., the Willamette Valley produces 99.9% of the domestic crop. It's right here. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I know.
That's kind of exciting.
A little up in Washington, but this is where it is, and it's thanks in great part to the research that goes on at Oregon State, because they are always working towards making a nut that's resistant to certain blights that have wiped out the production in other parts of the country and other parts, well, mostly our country. We're the third largest producer. You've got Turkey, that's the giant, and then Italy, and then us.
Well, see, that's what Eric was telling me this morning, that Turkey produces more.
Yeah, but they're little.
Little hazelnuts? Hardly worth mentioning then. But Turkey also produces the largest olive and olive oil production.
Really? I didn't know that.
Which I
Wow.
didn't know that either. I was talking to a guy from Turkey, and he's the one who told me that.
Wow.
Because I would have guessed Greece or Italy
Exactly.
for that one, but
or France even,
yeah,
but
would have been wrong.
yeah. Huh.
So you also did all the artwork that's in here.
Yes.
Which is lovely
Thank
stuff.
you.
So you're a watercolor
I
artist?
am. Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
Parallel track, and it started again I've always painted, but in the 80s when I started a column for the Oregonian called Fresh Approach, my editor at the time, Ginger Johnston, she wanted to use the column on the front of the section, so she said, well, I'd been doing line drawings up until then, and she said, could you produce color so we can use you on the front? So I started doing food art, and that's how all the food art started.
Wow. You know, there's a tattoo artist in Portland. I don't know her name, but all she does is fruits and vegetables.
Really?
That's all she does.
Gosh.
And it's beautiful work.
Yeah.
But if you don't want a salad or a cornucopia coming out of your
Or
armpit, she's
yeah.
not the one to talk to, because that's what you're going to get.
My God.
Fruits
Do you
and
have
vegetables.
one?
No. No. That sounded like
I know.
that
Maybe
buzzer.
when we're 90.
Yeah.
One of those last things.
Yeah. So what's happening
Yeah.
with the book now? You're promoting it all over the place?
I still promote, it has its own life, and I think it will be very long-lived because, you know, the industry embraces it and they'll keep it going. So it's just out there, and it's, Costco has just picked it up. So again, the book's been out since 2010, and now they're getting in so it will always be
How
there.
does that come about? How did that get negotiated?
They called the publisher. The Wilsonville store had enough requests for it, and asked if if the publisher would be interested. And so they just negotiated that. There's a middle company that does all the distribution.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, the Food Network is huge right now.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
I love watching Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, because I
That's
do.
a good one.
It is a good one.
Some of them drive me nuts. You know, I mean, I think that the food industry has gotten a little extreme, and just like everything else with the reality shows and such, they're trying. My effort as a food writer is to demystify food, and I also, like some of my mentors, like Julia Child and James Beard, I don't like food to have a snob attached to it.
Yeah.
And it still is, you know.
Yeah.
Food should be fun and delicious.
Well, you know, I was watching an old tape of Julia Child when she was making omelets one day.
Yes.
Okay, and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to make a liver omelet because my mother-in-law loves liver and I love my mother-in-law."
Oh.
And so she's flipping these. She's got two things going, and she's flipping these eggs, and you know, and it's got the liver in here and the onions in here, and she just wanted food to be easy.
She did.
You know,
She did.
and she did it so well.
She was magical. I got to meet her personally. Did one of these with her.
Really?
For about 40 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
When was that?
It was when our national association came to town, and I was up in Portland, and so they were able to schedule me an interview. And when it started, I had all these icebreaker things that I could maybe do, because I was worried that I'd just be tongue-tied. And so the very first thing I said to her after we sat down, and she said, "Hello, Jan, you know, call me Julia." I go, "Of course I will." She did. And I said, "I have something to thank you for." And she goes, "You do?" And I go, "Yes." And this is a story that was true. And it was with a previous book I had out called The Mustard Book. And I said, "A long time ago, you held up a book of mine on Good Morning America." It was when you and London, what's her name?
Joan
London, were doing your annual Christmas thing, and you held up my book, The Mustard Book. She said, "A marvelous little book." And I go, "That's what you said," which it was. So we were off and running, and we just talked about food and her philosophies and all about publishing. She said, "Always have a good index, make them pay for a good index." And so in this book we did. And it was, my husband was the indexer for this book. And
He's kind of an all-purpose guy, isn't he?
yeah, and he's good with tools. Yeah. And he
we won't go there.
And he publishes my art, all of
Well,
my
see,
art.
that's
He does
great.
the printing and, yeah.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, lucky for you, because I'm Jody C. and this is Backpage, and we're visiting with Jan Roberts-Dominguez today about her book, and this is a great cookbook. It's called Oregon Hazelnut Country, The Food, the Drink, the Spirit. So,
And it is a general cookbook. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I was really determined to make it a full service book, not just a book where every recipe has a nut in it. And so some of the recipes don't have nuts. Some of them are just sauces or beurre blancs, like you know, the traditional French with a twist of Asian, and using all of the regional stuff. Well, see, when I first started writing it, it was a friend of mine, and he said, Jan, if you're going to write a book about nuts, you better make it sexy. And he just really thought it would need that. And so I thought, how much more appealing could it be than if you associate it with some of the other really beloved foods of the region, and that's wine and craft beer, and then of course all of the other seasonal ingredients. And so I kind of took that approach.
So when you, what out of this do you make on a regular basis?
Oh, well, see, that's the thing about having this book around now, is I put a lot of my favorite things that I've been using in my column that I would have to dig for, like the Yukon Gold mashed potatoes, the beurre blanc sauces that, if you go to the fish section, so you're grilling albacore, and while it's grilling, you just whip up some of these simple sauces that have a bit of a wang to them, and they have wine and butter and maybe mustard and ponzu sauce, which is like a Asian soy sauce with lemon in it. And these all come together in minutes. And then you have a base of a sauce, you have the simple grilled fish. And then what I learned about hazelnuts is when you toast them and use them as a final garnish on steaks and chops and fish, it's like a bridge between some of the other components. And it's really good. So if you have them in your freezer, hazelnuts, because they have a shorter shelf life than other nuts. So you want to process them how you're going to use them, like for roasting, then stick them in your freezer so they don't, you know, they'll last longer.
Well, you know, that I'll buy pecans. I'm from the South, you know, so we
do.
like
yes,
pecans.
and they're good.
But I always just toast them like in a dry skillet.
Yes.
Just as soon as I get them
You
home.
can do that. Yeah.
And
more flavor.
Yeah, it makes it more flavorful, and there's a wonderful, unless you burn it, which of course I've done many times where I just go forget, you know, and walk out of the room. But I mean, your pecans will burn up like that.
Yes. So do hazelnuts.
Do they?
Yeah, I think it's the oil content.
Well,
so.
see, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your painting, and when you went to college.
Yes.
Did you go here at Oregon State?
I got my master's here. I did my undergraduate in California, San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly.
Okay.
Which has become such a good school that they would never accept me now, but.
Well, that's where the brainy kids go, right?
Yeah.
Cal Poly.
It was a good school, and it was another land grant university, like here, so I already had that. And I did my undergraduate in home economics education, came up here and got my master's in foods nutrition concentration in home ec. And
so you were going to teach?
I was, and then turned into a writer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. So the art, you know, it's always been a part of that. And I just think, I think it starts because anybody who's trying to break into writing right now, especially in the newspaper industry and in nonfiction kind of stuff like foods or whatever in that genre, it helped at the time that I was starting to be a writer, a columnist. It helped if you could bring something else to the table that put you apart from the others that were trying to do that. And for me, it was the art. I was a package. When I first tried to get syndicated around the Northwest, my husband and I hit the road, and I had my column samples that showed that I did line drawings along with it. So the editors didn't have to scramble to fill out the page. They had my art to go along with the column. If you're a photographer, you could include photography. And really now, that's the direction it's going.
Yeah. Do you do photography yourself, food photography?
Not enough. I mean, I do the food styling. So I worked with Carl and did the food styling. I started that way back in the olden days when you went to a studio and it was a full day process that you didn't even necessarily know how it was going to turn out because you shot, and I worked with, in San Francisco, one of the most premier food photographers of his time, Elmer Moss. And big, huge cameras where the image is there upside down, and all the fantastic lighting, and me as a food stylist on the side, and a boss who was telling me what to do, you know, would make it pretty, and then he would shoot it, and it was gorgeous. But nowadays, as you probably know, it's all digital. And so this was a fun experience shooting this book. For example, the cover, we didn't have a cover, and we were, I think, less than 10 days away from going to press on the book.
Oh boy.
It was getting scary. But all of the food shots we had done, both Joanne and I, Joanne the designer, and I had agreed they really didn't work with the cover for what we wanted to be just impactful and dynamic. And I called Polly, the Hazelnut marketing board director. I go, we don't have a cover yet. She goes, Jan, whatever it takes, do it, hire Carl again, get him back in the studio, because we need a good cover. So I got Carl scheduled, I got Joanne scheduled. I spent a full day gathering all of these produce. And this is how amazing this region is that on that one day in September,
You got all this stuff.
figs, raspberries, pears, hazelnuts, peppers, garlic, chanterelle mushrooms.
And onion.
And onions.
Wow.
That's it. And apples.
Yeah, and grapes.
And grapes, yes. And so those were all available. I pulled together all these boxes, plopped them all down. We shot, and then what you do with digital is you have a computer screen.
Right.
So say that would be the screen. We would shoot an image, and then we all look up at the screen, and then we all looked at each other and we said, we have a cover. So it was very exciting.
Now, somebody told me one time in food shots, food photo shots, they will take Pam and spray it on there so the cooked food is nice and shiny. Do you do that?
Sometimes I'll use glycerin and water.
Okay.
There's lots of tricks you can do, but you don't always need to do that. A lot of times it's better to just let the food shine through, and if you're working with a good photographer who knows his camera and knows his lighting, it shines. You don't need to do that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Well, so tell the story about the mirror and the
yes.
toffee,
Well,
wherever that is.
This is really cute. It would be towards the back. So the joke was that we, anytime I said this is going to be a really difficult shot, it turned out to be one of the easy ones. But I said it anyway with this. I go, okay, you guys, I know you don't believe me, but this is going to be hard. Joanne looked at Carl. She goes, don't you have a mirror in the dressing room? And he goes, yeah. She goes, why don't we bring it out here? Put it out there. Put it out. She took those the hazelnut toffee. She plopped it down on the mirror. Carl instantly got it, what she was going for. Click. And it was, and I feel stupid again. Yeah.
So now, there are a number of recipes in here called river brownies.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
River brownies are what you have when you're going on an adventure. And they're going to be chock full of everything to give you strength to carry on, pretty much. So I'd collected a whole lot of different river brownies. And so some of these, of course, have hazelnuts in them, and some of them don't, but that's the whole idea about a river brownie, is it's something that you just carve off as you're starving, and you can hold it with one hand while you're maybe pulling yourself up a mountain with the other, or holding an oar.
There are a lot of assumptions there. Yeah.
One that you're...
Pardon me, I've got to finish my brownie before I can help.
Well, then also river brownies are designed to go with an evening scotch if you've thought to pack that along. So there's that.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, and if you like fun, interesting, and beautiful cookbooks, this one is a great one. This is the Oregon Hazelnut Country Cookbook. It's by Jan Roberts-Dominguez. And where can people get this if they want it?
They can get it on my website, janrd.com.
Okay.
If they can't find it, it's now in Costco regionally. If you Google it, you're going to find it in quite a few bookstores. Here in Corvallis, it's all around town, and others too.
Do you have a favorite independent bookstore?
Grassroots here in town.
Okay.
You bet.
We always like to plug the independent booksellers because we want them to stay in business.
We do. Yeah.
So, do you have hazelnuts all the time?
I have them around all the time. I still have some wonderful growers that make sure I'm supplied. So, and they are a year-round crop. I mean, you harvest them in the fall, and then you can shell them. They'll keep really well in the shell too, but you can shell them and freeze them, and then you have them to handle anything from something raw, like there's some sauces in here that use them in a ground. There's a heavenly sauce in there that is with a yum bowl. A heavenly bowl is based on the yum bowl from Cafe Yum, and it's really good. So.
Well, I just really enjoyed it. The other thing I really enjoyed, I liked reading about the whole process of, like the little, I forgot what it's called, the little...
The outer coating? Yeah. Oh, because we came up with a way to remove it?
Yeah. It's amazing, the whole process, but you can go through the whole process of the buds, the little tiny red buds that you can hardly see and all like that.
Yes, the whole, it's a backward process. Most plants pollinate themselves in the spring, but the hazelnut tree is pollinated in the winter. It's a goofy thing. Yeah. You have, in the middle of winter, you have the stark trees. They're bare and very beautiful. You see their bones, and that's when the growers are out there pruning them because they can see what's happening to them. But along the sides, down through it, are all of these catkins. These fluffy
catkins,
yellow
that's the word.
Catkins, which I painted one in here, and the joke is amongst the growers that they look more like hops.
Yeah.
I think they're darn good.
They look like wisteria in a way.
Well, they do look like that. They're very bright yellow, and when the light's on them, they're that. So anyway, the catkins have the pollen, and then if you look really close at the tree, you have to get very close. Further down on the branches, there's these tiny little red flowers.
Yeah.
And that's where the pollen has to get in order to
produce the nuts.
Yes, exactly. And not the pollen from that tree. You use a different tree. You have what are called pollinators in the orchard. So you have the variety that you're growing, say a Barcelona, and then another variety that you only plant a few of those. I don't know if it's one for every 5 regular trees. And that's the pollinator. And they've figured out how many you need around all these trees.
Well, it's amazing to me. And they're giving me the high sign, so we're going to have to go away, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
If you want to pick up a great cookbook, this is Oregon Hazelnut Country by Jan Roberts-Dominguez. I'm Jody C. This is Back Page. Be sure and join us again next time as we take another peek at the back page. And remember, we're all in this together. More the same than different. Do your best. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Support for Backpage has been provided by Kohopono Multimedia Publishing, on the web at kohopono.com.